Hey viewers and viewers, my name is General Red Strategist and welcome to Crash Bandicoot the Insane Trilogy episode 12. Now, something that I do need to say right up off the bat, you can probably tell this by basically the quality of the audio that you're hearing at the moment. The fact that you're not really hearing the in-game audio, in fact you're not going to be hearing it at all to be honest, because unfortunately something went very wrong when I was recording episode 12. You can always trust that at some point in every series something will goof up, something will not work correctly, and as a result I'm either going to have to re-record an episode or I'm just going to have to record some post-audio that I can then put in on top of the footage that I accumulated. So basically if you're hearing this now, well not if, you are hearing this now, what am I saying? Now that you're hearing this, I had to basically replace my headset and microphone because I'll admit, the ones that I was using when I actually recorded the footage that you're seeing right now, they were kind of old. And unfortunately, as I was recording episode 12, they conked out. So as a result, the audio of the episode is just my voice constantly cutting in and out, lots of loud static crackling, stuff like that. It was basically just unwatchable, and unfortunately it kind of affected the in-game audio as well for some reason. I don't really know why. So hence I've just taken the decision to basically silence the audio from the actual footage itself so that you're not hearing it, because it would be a bloody nightmare, it would make your ears bleed, no joke. And instead I'm just going to record this audio now and I'm just going to put it into the episode, and instead you can listen to me just yammering on about whatever as I basically play through the remaining levels of Crash Bandicoot 1. Yes, spoiler alert, this is sort of this episode is basically where I do the final sort of couple of levels of Crash Bandicoot 1. There's still a couple of bonus things which I'll take a look at in due course. But yeah, as you're watching this, you know, I am obviously a little bit frustrated about the fact that my friggin' microphone conked out during the original recording. I did think about maybe sort of re-recording episode 12 entirely, just going back and doing the levels again, but I couldn't be arsed, to be honest. I could not be bothered, because the thing is, you know, Crash is obviously a very challenging game, and I would rather not sort of have to replay levels, just so I can kind of keep things moving, because I've already goofed up once in that regard before. I don't kind of want to do it again. And the thing is, you know, the footage that you're seeing on the screen right now is quite entertaining, and I did do fairly well overall, so why sacrifice that footage just to re-record a couple of levels that you know, would just end up with me basically not doing a blind playthrough anymore and all that. So yeah, I just thought I'll keep the footage, I'll upload it, I'll just put some commentary that I've put together in post over the episode. But the beauty of that actually is that rather than my commentary just being me sort of sat there just commentating on things that are happening in game and me just going, okay, now I've got to jump here, ooh, now I've got to jump there, things like that. Instead, I can actually just talk about random stuff instead and just waffle on. So in some ways, this video is going to be a bit like a podcast with a bit of Crash Bandicoot in the background and all that. Of course, you know, I think the big thing that I do want to mention and talk about in this episode is, of course, my sort of red rage moments that I sometimes have, because Lord knows I've had a couple of those as this series has progressed. So yeah, I'll try and talk a little bit about that. I've got other sort of topics as well that I could talk about. Basically, as I'm recording this right now in Audacity, I have to pretty much just spend roughly about 40 minutes and 6 seconds just recording this commentary, so I hope I've got enough to talk about. I'm sure I will do. I can spin loads of conversations out of random shit. Anyway, as I was saying, so, you know, people commenting, you know, that they're enjoying my red rage and all that, and indeed, that seems to be a common thing across a lot of my series. Whenever I have red rage, people always find it apparently hilariously entertaining watching me flail around coming out with stupid shit in my moments of frustration and all that. Though what is kind of interesting is that sometimes you do get the odd comment, I think, from viewers who maybe either don't quite get that when I sort of red rage, it's mostly meant to be for humorous effect rather than necessarily serious. Or, you know, there are people sometimes who watch those moments and they think to themselves, okay, I don't really think this is so much funny anymore. I'm actually genuinely starting to feel sort of concerned for you. Are you all right there, Red? Basically, and I always say to people who are watching, never take my moments of red rage too seriously, because usually when I red rage, what I'm venting is not frustrations necessarily at the game. It's usually me venting frustrations about myself and my own sort of really terrible gameplay. Because that's the thing, I've said this repeatedly in many series before. You don't watch General Red for pro gameplays. That's not why you're here. If you're here, it's probably because you want to watch me try and fail repeatedly at stuff before eventually getting it right. And Red Rage, sometimes can be entertaining when I start spluttering and coming out with weird insults and things like that. Though, admittedly, there are times where, sometimes I do look back on episodes where I've had Red Rage moments, and yeah, there is the occasional time where I look back on it and I do sort of cringe myself a little bit, and I'm like, oh god, did I really come out with that? Something like that. And but I still upload that sort of stuff because generally people find it entertaining. And the thing is, there's only ever really, I think, been a couple of instances on my channel in various series of what I'd call genuine proper rage, i.e. not rage where I'm just sort of playing up to the camera for entertainment, but moments where I'm genuinely getting proper angry and frustrated. And that tends to be where games are sort of unreasonably difficult, things like that. So, or if it's not that, it might be moments where I'm perceiving that it's unreasonably difficult, whereas actually it's not necessarily the game, it's actually just me, but I'm not realising that there's something I'm doing wrong or something like that. So a couple of moments, a couple of series in fact, where I did have sort of genuine proper Red Rage moments like that. One of them was in Grom Terror in Tibet. I say one of them. I think Grom Terror in Tibet actually made me have quite a few moments of Red Rage. Because the thing about that game was, if anyone doesn't know what Grom Terror in Tibet is, it's a 2003 game. Do you know the sort of old Commandos games by Eidos Interactive? The ones that had like a top-down perspective, like a top-down sort of isometric sort of perspective, and you had like a group of commandos in World War II, and you had to sort of take them through missions, keep them all alive, things like that. Basically, Grom Terror in Tibet is like that in terms of its gameplay and how it looks. But whereas Commandos, from what I remember, those games tended to be fairly smooth and they tended to get it right, Grom was comparatively jankier, and as a result of that, it could be difficult to play. And that sometimes was a bit of a source of proper kind of red rage on my part, where, admittedly, some of the things I did in that was my bad. It was just mistakes that I was making. But, to be honest, there were also plenty of times, during the Grom playthrough where it did feel like I was not just kind of fighting my own lack of skill, but also kind of fighting the game itself, to put it that way. So, yeah, that was a classic example of proper red rage in a series. Another one which I sort of look back on, and I do... It still kind of makes me cringe a bit to this day. If you've ever seen my playthrough here on YouTube of the original Tomb Raider 1, it was something like episode 10 or something like that, where I absolutely flipped out, and because I was having so many struggles with the game, though admittedly... That was a rare instance of where I had red rage, but it wasn't the game's fault. It was actually me, because basically I'd misunderstood certain aspects of the game mechanics and the controls and stuff like that. There were certain things that I wasn't quite getting, which obviously is on me. That's not a problem with the game. But I remember, like in episode 10 of the original Tomb Raider playthrough I was just raging, and there were people in the comments who were just like, dude, just put the game down if you're not enjoying it. But the thing is, like, Tomb Raider 1, when I got to like episode 11, I sort of had a moment to reflect, and I realised that I'd been an absolute asshole in that episode. And so, literally, if you watch episode 11 of my old Tomb Raider playthrough, one of the things that I remember doing up front in my commentary there was just apologising and saying I'm sorry if it was really salty. I'm sorry if I was really salty there, because I've had time to basically find the game manual, and I've actually looked at it and realised that, yeah, a lot of it was my bad. But it's funny because from sort of episode 11 onwards of Tomb Raider, after I'd sort of discovered where the game manual was located on Steam and all that, basically suddenly I actually got a lot better at it. Not pro, I didn't get pro at it, but I actually started to enjoy the game much more, to the point where after I finished my playthrough of the game, I gave it a positive review on Steam, and ultimately then I decided to play Tomb Raider 2 as well, and that was good. So there was a funny sort of instance, one of the few instances of when I've had proper genuine red rage. But like I say, there's an interesting sort of contrast between that moment of red rage in Tomb Raider 1 and the moment of red rage that I had in Grom Terror in Tibet, because the Grom Terror in Tibet one, I think, was very much an example of red rage where, okay, some of it was down to me being shit, but I also stand by some of my criticisms of Grom, and I still say that aspects of the gameplay and the game mechanics were janky, and as a result, like I said, it did feel like you were having to fight against the game itself at times, which is never quite fun. Whereas Tomb Raider, the difference, between Grom and that one is that in Tomb Raider, my red rage afterwards I realised was all really kind of my own fault, and was nothing really to do with the game itself. So yeah, if you ever thought about playing the original Tomb Raider, you can get it here on Steam. In fact, you can get pretty much all the classic Tomb Raider games on Steam, and it's well worth doing so, because by the looks of it, they're all pretty good. It reminds me, actually, I have me and Phil did actually record the first episode for Tomb Raider 3, and it's been sat on my computer for ages. Problem is, I'm just kind of waiting for the ideal time to maybe bring it out and start doing a playthrough of it. Because the thing is, as soon as I upload that first episode, I know people are going to want to see more. Because the Tomb Raider games are classics, and I do love good 3D platformers, and Tomb Raider is great. So I know, like I say, as soon as I upload that first episode, people are going to want to see more. Hence why I haven't uploaded it just yet, because I've got so many other things on the go at the moment. But thing is, there may well be an opportunity soon for me to upload it. I'll come to that maybe towards the end of the video, who knows. But yeah, apart from obviously Tomb Raider 3, Tomb Raider 1, Tomb Raider 2, I have Tomb Raider 4, 5 and 6 as well in my Steam library. What's interesting is that, from what I understand, Tomb Raider 3 is the OG Tomb Raider game that everybody remembers fondly. Everyone sort of remembers as being the best one of the original Tomb Raider games. 4, 5 and 6, though, from what I understand, most people sort of judge that to be where the quality of the original Tomb Raiders starts to drop off a bit. It doesn't sort of plummet like a stone from the get-go, to put it that way, but apparently it's just the overall quality of them just isn't up to par with the original 3 Tomb Raider games. But yeah, something, because the thing is, I just thought it'd be interesting to talk about that, because, I am aiming to steadily play my way through them, the original Tomb Raider games, here on my channel. So at some point, like I say, I need to get cracking on with Tomb Raider 3 and play that one. So yeah, if you haven't seen my Tomb Raider 1 or Tomb Raider 2 series here on the channel, it's well worth having a watch of them. They're pretty good. Tomb Raider 2, though, was kind of a very different kettle of fish to the original one. I mean, it was the same kind of platforming adventure fare as you got in Tomb Raider 1, except there was a much, much greater emphasis on combat. And obviously, it being an old game, sometimes the combat in that one could be a bit wonky. So admittedly, there were moments of minor red rage, actually, in Tomb Raider 2 as well. Though, once again, it was red rage that was more, well, it was a bit of a combination of red rage to do with my own inadequacies as a gamer, combined with maybe just a little bit of rage at the mechanics obviously being quite old and clunky. So effectively that perception of having to fight against the game a bit. But yeah, I mean, it's still worth watching Tomb Raider 2 and all that. It's a great one. So I'm looking forward to doing more Tomb Raider 3, though, when I eventually get around to playing it. Problem is, me and Phil recorded that first episode for Tomb Raider 3 quite a while back, so I can't remember where I was actually up to. So I'll need to probably watch my original episode 1 back before I start playing any more of it, just to remind myself where I was up to and all that. But yeah, gosh, that was pretty fantastic. And actually, now that I think about Red Rage, that as a subject, there are other games as well, which I can think of where I've had Red Ragey moments. Obviously, there are some RTCW episodes for certain add-ons where I've had sort of what I would call more humorous Red Rage, i.e. where it's not obviously the game that's at fault, it's me being really shit. So that's always a fun one. But actually, come to think of it, Ori and the Blind Forest, my playthrough of that, which I completed not too long ago, That's another one actually that did get some red rage out of me, and once again, that was an example of me just being really shit at the game. Because the thing about Ori and the Blind Forest is, I sort of didn't really know this going into it, but by all accounts, it's a game that's deliberately engineered to be quite challenging. It's challenging in terms of like the movement and momentum of your character, and of course the sheer sort of massive moves that you sometimes need to do in different areas in order to avoid all the enemies and all the things that might kill you, stuff like that. So, I'm kind of proud of myself for beating it, though. It's like Angori Tom says, there's two types of fun, Type 1 and Type 2. Type 1, of course, is fun where you actually feel like you're having fun as you're doing it. Type 2 is one of those types of fun where when you're doing something, you don't necessarily feel like you're having fun, but afterwards you look back on it and you think, yeah, I'm glad I did that. I did have fun. And very much there were parts of Ori and the Blind Forest which very much felt like Type 2 fun. But to be honest, that's often the case with a lot of games where I have red rage moments. Usually I do look back on them afterwards and think, you know what, I am pleased and happy that I played that. I am glad that I did. Like, for all the things I said about Grom, Terror in Tibet a moment ago, I do look back on that game and think, I'm glad I played it, because it was one of those kind of games which I sort of vaguely remember the demo from my youth, remembering how weird it looked. But I never obviously had the chance to play it in my youth, and then I found a second-hand copy of it on eBay, bought it, and was able to get it running. So yeah, I am glad that I played it through though, because thing is, Grom Terror in Tibet is one of those games that is so niche that the only real playthroughs of it that you'll find are in languages other than English. I think I'm probably one of the first people on YouTube to have ever done an English language playthrough of Grom Terror in Tibet. In terms of English commentary, that is. So yeah, a little general red first for you right there, I guess. Watch as someone now in the comments takes it upon themselves to go away onto the YouTube search bar and search through every single playthrough there's ever been of Grom Terror in Tibet, not that there's going to be many of them, and comes across a English playthrough that predates mine and says, ha, stuck it red, you're not the first person to have played that, this guy or whoever did it first. But yeah, I'm sure, whatever. If they do, they do, I don't care. Let me have a sip of tea whilst I'm at it. God, yeah, it's going to be challenging actually, talking for a full 40 minutes and 6 seconds just like this. Hence why I've got a cup of tea right here with me. So if you ever hear any weird any weird pauses in my audio and what sounds like me sipping, it's because I'm taking a drink, because I'm going to need a drink from time to time just to keep my throat lubed up, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, I won't ever describe it in that way again. I say that now, but knowing me, sometime down the line I'll probably describe it like that again. Now, something else, just as a minor aside, if you're wondering, however this kind of audio commentary that I'm doing right now turns out, I'm just going to slap it on the video. I'm not reading off a script here, ladies and gentlemen. I am literally just thinking of things to talk about as I go along. So hence why I have moments of what am I talking about next? That sort of thing. You know what I mean? Filler stuff like that. Right. So yeah, I've just whittled on about Red Rage and stuff like that for 18 minutes and 30 seconds right now. So yeah, I mean, hope you obviously are doing well and that you're enjoying the Crash Bandicoot playthrough and all that. It's, the views have tailed off a bit, as is often the case with any sort of Let's Play series on YouTube, but among those of you who are watching it has been popular. It is getting a bit of viewer engagement in terms of comments, the odd like, things like that, which, doesn't sound like much, but when you're a tiny-ass little person like me who just does YouTube as a hobby, not as a career, anything like that, any like is better than no like and all that kind of thing. Oh yes, God, I know, YouTube, one of those things. I've always been sort of asked if I had the opportunity to turn YouTube into a profession, into a career, would I do so? And, it's a question that I've never really thought about all that often. I mean, part of me's thought that, yeah, I mean, if I had proper sort of viewing figures per video that were numbering in the thousands, well, not just the thousands, but in the sort of tens to hundreds of thousands, then certainly, I would seek to monetize my channel to earn a bit of cash on it. But having said that, the thing about YouTube is the time to really get into doing Let's Plays on YouTube was back in what, like 2008, 2012, that sort of period. Because since then, of course, YouTube has gone through so many changes as a platform that it's really difficult these days to be able to actually make a sustainable living off it. And, there's various reasons for that. There's obviously been YouTube's drive to be more sort of child-friendly in certain respects, which is kind of bollocks considering they have YouTube Kids, which is where all the young viewers really actually ought to be, not looking at adult YouTube and all that. But, certainly other events like the Adpocalypse and stuff like that back in the day, they didn't help either, because since then YouTube has had to become, under pressure of losing funding and all that, it's had to change its, become a bit more stringent, basically, in terms of enforcing some of its community guidelines and policies and policing certain videos, things like that. And of course, with the algorithms now, it's really hard if you want your channel to be monetized in terms of, you can't afford to have like a single verbal slip up, you can't cuss all that much. Otherwise, if the algorithm picks it up, it can end up demonetizing your video for you. So YouTube, not really the platform that it was anymore. Some people have sometimes asked me though, Red, have you ever thought about maybe Twitch streaming or something like that? And it's certainly something that would be interesting, but problem is, I don't know a lot about how you'd sort of go about setting up Twitch streams and all that. And the thing is, I feel like if you're going to be a Twitch streamer, you need to have sort of like a good, consistent schedule in terms of when you stream and what you're streaming, things like that. So that way you have a better chance of accumulating more of an audience. And again, things that I've heard from people, from people's videos, people who actually do stream on sites like Twitch and things like that, even then it's still quite a hard business to get into. And, the sort of biggest example I can think of is I was watching a video recently. It was Yogscast Rithian, I think that was the one, with two other members of the Yogscast, Bryony and Kirsty. And they were talking about Twitch streaming, and Rivian was, for example, talking about, much like YouTube, Twitch streaming is difficult to sort of really make it big on these days. And it's one of those things where, it's hard to kind of get lucky and go big without sort of assistance from big existing Twitch streamers and things like that. So, like I say, Twitch streaming maybe is something that I would think about doing, but I don't have any sort of imminent plans to do anything like that. Because the thing about me is, obviously, I have a full-time job outside of YouTube as a hobby, so that takes up a lot of my time, as well as other stuff. So, it's one of those things where I think to myself, maybe I'll do it someday, but I don't really have a concrete plan in terms of when I would do it, whether I'd be sort of inclined to do it right now or anything like that. But, the thing is, like, truth be told, people probably would ask me, if you don't sort of do YouTube or anything like that for money, then, Red, why? Why do you do it? Because, some of your series, you barely pull in any views or anything like that. And I honestly just say because it's a hobby. I enjoy it, honestly. Knowing that even if there's just a couple of people out there who see my videos and find them entertaining, then that makes it worth it for me. And, I really enjoy gaming, and I like being able to talk about gaming and to be able to kind of share that with other people. But the thing is, throughout my life, I'll admit, I've only ever had kind of like a few friends in my life who've sort of been into gaming. When I say that, I don't mean I've only ever had a tiny number of friends in life overall. I've had, I've met and made friends with plenty of people, but of that sort of total number of people who I count as my friends in my life, probably only a sort of, small number of them are gamers or are into gaming and things like that. Is my phone just vibrating? It is, yeah. Well, can't really answer that right now. Apologies if you can hear that in the background. I hope that's not fucking over the audio recording, ladies and gentlemen. I had a feeling before I started recording, I knew someone would try and ring me while I was doing this, but scratch that. I'll wait. I'll reply to whoever it is in due course. It's not going to be anything of an emergency or anything like that, I'm telling you now. But yeah, I mean, if they try ringing again, like imminently, then I'll have to pick it up. But we'll see. Sorry, that was a bit of a digression. That was. What was I talking about a moment ago? I was talking about doing YouTube as a hobby and all that. Yeah, I mean, like I say, if basically my videos entertain even just a couple of people, then it's worth it for me. And it's a way of sharing a bit of a passion with the world and all that. Because the thing about me is, when I was a kid. My family, we only ever had sort of budget desktop office PCs in our home, or a computer rather. I shouldn't say PCs, so that makes it sound like we had loads of them. But when I was obviously a kid, prior to sort of about the age of 12 or whatever, we only ever had the one computer in our house, and like I say, it was only ever like a budget desktop PC. So there were a lot of games, coming out during my youth in sort of 1990s, which everyone else was sort of raving about, but I never got that opportunity to play. So the thing is, like the original Tomb Raiders, for example, that I mentioned a moment ago, they came out in the sort of mid to late 90s, but I never really ever got to play them, because I think during the mid 90s, I think they were only ever on console, weren't they? They were only ever on like the original PlayStation 2, stuff like that. So I never had any video game consoles when I was a kid. So we only ever had our home PC. So, because that was obviously a budget desktop PC, a budget office desk PC, naturally there were sort of limits in terms of what kind of games it could play. So there were some games that it could run absolutely fine, like Captain Claw, the old Age of Empires games, for example, like Age of Empires 1 and 2. I remember those games very fondly from my youth. Among other stuff, like some of the old Worms games as well, like Worms World Party, etc., etc. So, there were games that I played in my youth on, my old sort of family PC. But then when I was about sort of 12 and onwards, I actually got a computer of my own. Because, my old man, he'd had a few promotions at work, his salary had gone up, things like that. So, we could afford a bit more in way of luxuries, etc., etc. Well, I say luxuries, not massive luxuries. I mean, when I eventually got a computer of my own, still, that wasn't like a proper gaming rig or anything like that. That was still just like a budget home office PC. But, it was good for doing schoolwork on, and it was good for playing sort of rudimentary games on and things like that. And, once I sort of, had that kind of computer of my own and all that, there were other games that increasingly I could start playing as well. So, stuff like Rayman 2, Rayman 3, Rayman M, Beyond Good and Evil, etc., etc. Command and Conquer Generals, when that came out in 2003. That was another game that I got and I really enjoyed. So, that's just a bit of history about, me during my youth doing a bit of gaming of my own. But like I say, there were so many sort of big games at the time which just kind of passed me by, like the original Half-Life and then Half-Life 2. I never played those when I was a kid. Just thinking like what other games were pretty big at that time. Certainly like the GTA games. Everyone sort of, so many of my kind of classmates at my school, at my high school, they used to rave about GTA games and things like that, and I had never played any of them. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, But over time, playing those sort of games that I did play in my youth, that kind of got my interest in video gaming. And over time, now that I'm an adult with a salary of my own and living fairly sort of comfortably, then it just enables me to revisit all the games of my youth that I missed, including this, Crash Bandicoot and all that. Because of course, Crash Bandicoot was. It was purely a console game, wasn't it? Back in the day, I don't recall ever seeing it being available for PC. Similarly, actually, Spyro, that was only ever a PlayStation game, wasn't it, back in the day? And, it's great, though, that some of these old games, which were console-only back in the day, it's great that they're being sort of ported over onto PC. Because that's the thing, I've very much been a PC gamer throughout my life. So, I've sometimes thought, though, about would I ever buy a video games console, and if so, what type would I buy? I thought a little bit about that before, and at my sort of nearest local Curry's PC World, they do sell video game consoles, and I was looking in there recently, and they have, for example, Nintendo Switch. And truth be told, there are certain Nintendo games that I would love to be able to try. So maybe like some of the Mario games, like, Super Mario Maker 2, stuff like that. Or maybe like some of the Legend of Zelda stuff. I know there's obviously Tears of the Kingdom that came out pretty recently as I'm going to record this. And there's Nintendo games that I would love to be able to try. But obviously the problem with Nintendo games is they're only ever exclusive to Nintendo consoles. They rarely, if ever, get shared elsewhere or ported onto other systems. So, I've sometimes thought about why don't I potentially invest in like a Nintendo Switch someday. And, I was looking in my local PC world, /Currys, to see, what sort of price they were. And, they're not cheap. Obviously, they're about sort of like 260 quid or something for a console, and I don't think that necessarily comes with games. I think you then actually have to buy games on top of that, whether from like the Nintendo eStore or whether actual hard physical copies. So, that's always a bit of a pain in the arse because, for example, I was looking at some of the physical copies of games that were in store for the Nintendo Switch. I've also looked out of curiosity online at the Nintendo eShop, sort of game prices, and the problem is obviously for like some of Nintendo's big franchises like Mario and Legend of Zelda, stuff like that, quite often installments in those franchises, they're not cheap either. You might be looking at like freaking 50 quid for like certain Legend of Zelda games, for example, which is always a pain in the arse, but what can you do? And from what I understand, the problem obviously with Nintendo consoles is that some of their games, which are designed for use with certain consoles, there's no sort of compatibility with like other consoles as well, which is kind of sucky. I kind of wish they'd maybe sort of think about, porting, for example, games, for instance, that were only available on like the Nintendo Wii U, for example, over onto Switch. That would be something interesting. Like, for example, The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD. Now, I think I've talked about that game before in my Say Being Hunted series at some point, but the thing about The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker is I can sort of remember a cousin of mine playing that on the original GameCube when I was a kid, and I remember from what I saw of it as a youth, it always looked very interesting because of the art style, stuff like that. And I always thought, if I had a console, maybe that was a game that I would have loved to have played back in the day. And thing is, Nintendo did do, a remaster of it, a HD remaster of Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, which they released back in the day for Wii U several years ago. But the problem is that Wii U as a console was discontinued a while back, so unless you already own one, you can't really get any games on it. So that's kind of sucky, because, like I say, Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD, I would have loved to play that. But of course, that would mean I would have to get a Nintendo Wii U, but because Nintendo aren't selling any more Wii U's, I probably have to buy it second hand, something like that. So yeah, but Nintendo Switch, as an alternative console, there's possibilities on there. Like I say, I think the main, if I was to buy a Switch, the main game that I'd really be interested in would be Super Mario Maker 2. Because the thing is, one of my favourite series here on YouTube that I always find myself re-watching every so often is Game Grump's original Super Mario Maker playlist, that one, because God, there's some real entertaining stuff in there. And I look at that and I think to myself, my God, that is a game that just looks like it'd be really fun to play user-made levels and things like that. And then of course Nintendo made Super Mario Maker 2, which has more options in it. Funny thing is though, I've never actually really watched the Game Grumps Super Mario Maker 2 playlist, which I probably should do at some point. But just some thoughts right there, ladies and gentlemen. But I wonder if you could get sort of like bundles with Nintendo Switch. Maybe there's like special offers where you can buy a Nintendo Switch with some pre-packaged games in it. I don't know. There might be offers like that, so I'll have to have a look around, see if maybe that's an option or whatever. But like I say, I don't have imminent plans to invest in a console like Nintendo Switch or anything like that. In fact, technically, I've not actually decided that I am going to just yet. It's just something that I've been idly kind of entertaining in the back of my head. As you do, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you've all had moments like that where you think, maybe I should do something like this in the future, but I don't know when or, you know, where I'm going to do it or anything like that. But, you know, just some interesting thoughts. Thing is, though, you know, if I was to buy like a Nintendo Switch, technically that would be the first sort of proper non-PC video games console I've ever owned in my life. It wouldn't be the first video games console I've ever played on, though. That's a subtle distinction right there. Because technically, you know, I have played console games before. For example, whenever I revisit the north of England to see friends and family during time off from work, sometimes, you know, I go around to Phil's place, we crack out his PS5 or whatever, or his PS4, and like just play some console games that he's got. So, like, for example, me and him have played some of the Assassin's Creed games. We've played we played a bit of like Fallout 4 as well. Having said that, we haven't actually done any console gaming at his place for a while. Because the thing is, last couple of times I've been up north, you know, sometimes what's great to do is to actually just go over and visit him and just crash out at his place for a whole day, and we just, you know, crack out the video game console and make some progress in Fallout 4 or something. But last couple of times I've been, I haven't really had a chance to do that. I have visited him, but only ever for like a couple of hours, and usually we like to sort of go out, take a walk around, get some fresh air, maybe stop by a cafe somewhere and get a brew. Things like that. So, yeah, last couple of times I've visited him, we've only ever been able to do sort of that sort of thing. We haven't really been able to make any progress in Fallout 4 or anything like that. But that actually does make me sort of wonder sometimes, because, you know, Fallout 4 is available on Steam, for example. So I sometimes wonder if maybe I should wait for it to go on offer and maybe buy it at some point, and then, you know, I could do just bonus content or something at some point on the channel if I wanted, if it ever took my fancy to do. Because the thing is, there are various games that I have on my Steam library where I've sort of entertained that possibility, where I've seen it, you know, if it's going on offer or something like that, and I just think, okay, you know what, I'm going to buy it, I'm going to put it into my Steam library, because I will eventually play it at some point, and I may well play it on the channel, maybe as a bit of bonus content or whatever. So just a thought there. But yeah, so, you know, Fallout 4, maybe I'll put it on my Steam wish list. I know obviously there's like summer sales going on at the moment on Steam, and I have been buying a few games that have been going for dirt cheap prices. So yeah, I have been buying stuff. Haven't actually checked Fallout 4. I'll have to see. Maybe if it's let me try that again. Maybe if it's on offer or whatever. Come to think of it, though, you know, there are probably other Fallout games as well that are on Steam, and I'm sure people have asked me in the past in the comments on some of my videos about the Fallout games. Are they something that I would ever think about potentially playing? And the answer to that is maybe, because the only thing obviously with the Fallout games is that they're RPGs, so, you know, like games like Skyrim, stuff like that, they're going to be very, very big games. There's going to be a lot to them. So if I was to buy them and play them, I wouldn't necessarily do like proper playthroughs of their storylines necessarily. They'd be something where maybe I do a few just like crazy sort of fun episodes where I just go into the game and just muck around. Kind of like I did with Skyrim, for example. Yeah, my Skyrim playthrough here on YouTube. That's something I've not done an instalment of actually for a while. I think I've done about 20 episodes of Skyrim. If you want to sort of check those out, please do. Basically, for anyone who doesn't know, quite a few months ago, I started doing a bonus content Skyrim playthrough here on the channel, where basically it was basically my homage to Yogscast Sips. So anyone, you know, show of hands in the comments and all that. Anyone remember watching Sips's old Skyrim playlist when he was playing Skyrim back in like 2012 or 13 or whenever it was? I remember watching, well, vaguely remember watching a fair bit of it back in the day, because it's like a classic Yogscast Sip series. That just the editing of it is so great, and just all the sort of crazy in-jokes and things like that. It's a fantastic series to watch if you've never seen it before. But yeah, basically I started doing my own sort of occasional bonus content Skyrim playthrough on the channel, where basically I was doing a homage to that with like crazy editing in the episodes from time to time, things like that. So yeah, maybe I'll have to get back to Skyrim at some point, play a bit more of it and all that. Oh, yes. Okay, we've got less than a minute to go, though, before the end of the video, so time for me to start wrapping up here, I do think, ladies and gentlemen. So apologies again for the audio issues and the fact that I've had to kind of record this commentary in post and just paste it over the video. But, you know, hope you've enjoyed this effective little sort of podcast-style episode of Crash Bandicoot, ladies and gentlemen. And, yeah, so... now that I've completed Crash Bandicoot 1 itself, I'll do a bonus episode, obviously, on like Stormy Ascent and stuff like that, which I've been told is apparently bloody hard. And after that, I'll probably take a little break from Crash to play something else, and then I'll come back and do Crash 2. Other than that, Facebook and links down below, along with the link to my propagandist channel for anyone interested. And if you enjoyed, a like is, of course, always appreciated. Other than that, this is General Red signing off now, ladies and gentlemen. Hoping you'll join me real soon for something else. Goodbye, everybody. Well, there we go, we're doing it. Gotcha. These shower cubicles? No. Lock room. Check them all. Oh, told you there'd be someone there. Well, I didn't, but you know what I mean? Oh my god, did someone leave a floater? Not anymore. No one's in that one. Bonk. Shit. Gotcha. Shit. Oof. Just keep kicking the door open. Don't blow up on me, bud. Nobody there? Shit. That's a lot of enemies.